As adults across Canada return to doing the things they love, there is the assumption that kids will be doing exactly the same, but not so fast. There's a lot of reasons to be concerned that as restrictions are easing for adults, in some sense, life ain't gonna get any easier for kids, even though pediatricians have been pointing out for a while now that thankfully coronavirus hits kids less severely than it does adults, and in many ways, influenza is more severe in kids than coronavirus is. So what am I talking about here? Well, we've got adults all across Canada looking around the world and saying, I'm ready to get back to life. Either because they're seeing what's happening in places like Singapore that says, we got to learn to live with COVID. They're no longer even producing the daily case counts. Or we see what's happening in the United States, and whether it's Democrat, Republican, North, South, wherever, they're finding ways to get back to life. And we watch all those sporting events and other large gatherings in the US and we go, why can't we do that here? So we've got people who've been saying that for months now, people who've never supported the lockdowns in Canada. But I think even people who have supported the lockdowns, even the hardest measures, are now kind of saying, all right, what's the big deal? Let's get moving. They wanted vaccines. They've now got access to both their doses. And those Canadians are saying, all right, let's reopen, even though the officials keep moving the goalposts. Well, I think there'll be a certain point where, hopefully, fingers crossed, you just can't move the goalposts anymore. And more regular folks are going to say, all right, let's reopen. And that will be adults speaking up for themselves, making their voices heard. But what about the kids? The problem is the restrictions on our kids' lives have never added up. They've never made sense. We've had pediatric experts saying, don't close the schools. And yet they have shut them down pretty much all across Canada. Credit to British Columbia, which has always said, look, we got to go easier on our kids. Elementary school age kids have largely not needed to wear masks even indoors, and they've hardly ever shut down the schools in BC. But there's a lot of concern in places like Ontario that things actually aren't going to be back to normal for kids in September. We hear teachers' unions saying, oh, we've always supported schools being reopened just so long as they're safe. And the things they're talking about now in July about making schools safe are really massive overhauls that the evidence doesn't suggest we need. Oh, we've got to completely redo the ventilation systems, and yes, we've got to change the class sizes, and more hurdles that you go, I don't know if these are going to be in place by September. And they're not needed because schools were safe as it was prior to discussion of all of these things back in previous waves of this virus, when many pediatricians said, come on, reopen the schools, and yet they're putting up barriers to the schools being reopened in September. You know, I'll never forget walking by a playground and seeing, and in Ontario they have rules where kids need to wear masks outdoors during recess, even though in BC they didn't have many of the kids wearing them indoors. And I'll never forget walking past a playground. I was just walking along the sidewalk and I happened to be passing the school, and there are these kids kind of slumped down in defeat. They had their masks just around their chins, not their faces covered. They were really upset. Teacher walking by, or whoever the person was, the lunch supervisor, and they walked by and said, hey kids, don't forget, put those masks back on, put them back on right now. And the kids go, oh, okay, fine. And they put them back on. I've already seen some children's advocates, pediatric experts lamenting the fact that in the city of Ottawa, they have outdoor summer camps going on right now in the summer where coronavirus cases are crashing all across the country. The numbers are so low. Kids socially distanced in a park outdoors wearing masks. Small kids, they're like grade 1, SK, whatever they are, little kids wearing masks outdoors at the same time when we've got other provinces that are completely lifting their mask mandates, where masks are actually voluntary. They're not mandatory in certain parts of Canada. So bottom line, don't just assume that because things are easing for adults, that things are going to be even better for kids, because the truth is they need advocates right now. They need their parents. They need adults to stand up and fight for them.